So, welcome back to another episode on the channel. On this episode, we're going to be building a set of custom cut 16-inch wheels for a Honda 4-wheeler. I will say this, I'm not set up to build custom cut wheels the way I was about 3 years ago. Back then I had a really nice jig set up that I could bolt the centers in. I had a thing to clamp the wheel down really tight to the plate. But you don't really need all that to get a really nice wheel. And I used to get tons of questions on where to get wheel centers and how to lay them out, how to make sure they were true, how to kind of get everything going and actually build the wheel. Now the wheel blanks come from a place called Hey Wheel. I think it's HEYWHEEL.com. I want to say they're out of Kansas or Kentucky. Kansas, I believe. They're out of Kansas. And really nice people. You can go, they got a website, but you can't order off their website. You actually got to call to order. They're still kind of, I would say, a smaller company, but they're really nice people to call and talk to. Normally, I don't know, week and a half, 2 weeks, you'll get your set if you go ahead and order. I think it depends on if they got them in stock or got to make them. They're all agricultural blanks. So they've got many different sizes. You can get from 12 inch to like 30 inch or something. The width is what'll hold you back. A lot of people will want a certain width and they may offer it and they may not. This particular set we're building is going to be 16 by 4.5. I want to say he was wanting a 4 inch, but they didn't have a 4 inch, so 4.5 was the closest. Anyways, let's jump over here and take a look at it. I'll show you kind of how to lay it out and the way that I do it and kind of what you'll need to do it, in my opinion, to get the best results. So, if you don't have access to a plasma cutter or water jet or laser or something, you're going to need to find somebody that can cut you out of center. You need to order whatever size wheel blanks you need. And you'll have to have those wheel blanks before you can cut your centers. You need a pretty decent tight fit for the center. I shoot for a 1/16 of an inch of gap on my wheel centers. And if you split that difference, that gives you about a 32nd all the way around. And that's enough that you got enough. You can move it around a little bit if needed, but it's not so much that you're going to worry about getting your center off and have some issues as far as it being true. You'll want a really flat surface to work on if you have one. You don't necessarily need a crazy flat surface, and I'll show you why here in a minute. But once you figure out where you want your offset at and you've got the flattest surface you can get, you'll want some way to shim it so you can get your center where you want it. Now I've got some 1-inch blocks. They're little press brake dies for the press brake, little swag off-road kit. And it worked out just perfect where 2 inches was exactly what I needed. And these are 1-inch blocks. And the customer isn't crazy picky on the offset, but he wants as much offset as he can get. So the 2 inches worked out perfect for this one. So what you'll want to do, get everything set up, and we're going to tack one side here, or you can tack it anywhere. Pick you a side to start with and put you a tack. And then I recommend a tape measure that reads 30 seconds. If you have a tape measure that's got the 30-second lines, you'll get way more accurate on your end result than you will if you're trying to eyeball half of a 1/16 on a tape measure. So I recommend getting you a tape measure with 30 seconds, but you don't have to have one. Once we tack it up, we're going to run a square across it, and at the opposite side, we're going to pull this measurement at least 3 times. Whatever your measurement is here, you want to duplicate that straight across. And then that first measurement you get will be your goal measurement for all the way around. So we're taking it for granted that this wheel is completely true and flat all the way around, which is probably not perfect, but we're taking for granted that it is. So your first measurement you pull, that measurement will follow you all the way around. And you just do across this way, go across that way, and then you quarter it from there. That way, so on and so forth. I recommend getting you a pry bar or something you can pry with. because more than likely when you get your 4 tacks in there, one of your quarters is going to be a little off, at least a 1/16 off, and you'll need to pry it up. And like I said, the closer you can get to being perfect, the better outcome you'll have. So I'm gonna set the phone back up, get our first tacks put in, and we'll go from there. So one thing I did forget to mention is, depending on what you're building this for, will determine what size centers you need. This being a smaller Honda 4-wheeler and only a 16-inch wheel, and the centers came out to be 13.450 is the outside diameter on the centers. 1/4 inch is what we went with. And on this particular application, 1/4 inch would be plenty. I've actually done quite a few 16-inch wheels, all 1/4 inch centers, and they've been heavily abused and they've all held up great. So 1/4 inch for this, but if you're trying to do something for a truck or a Jeep or something, you might want to step up to maybe 1/2 inch or I don't know, maybe at least 3/8, if not 1/2 inch, depending on how you want to brace it. Some people, I've seen it go 3/8 and run a bunch of bracing on it to keep the centers from twisting. It kind of depends on what design you're going for. Definitely do research and figure out what size centers you need. So once you get your first 2 tacks in there, what you'll want to do is whatever you have sitting in the center of it to keep it up, you'll want to pull that out so you can pivot it. If you have a tack here and a tack here, you'll need to pivot it the other way to make sure you get it perfectly square. We're just a hair under a 1/16 out on the next way, so I pulled that 1-inch block out of there, and we're going to go ahead and square it up and get 2 tacks on it. So we got 4 tacks in it. When you tack one side, the quickest you can tack the other side, the better off you'll be. You don't want to tack this side and then walk inside and come back and think that it's still going to be all right. That heat will start to pull. So the faster you can tack the opposite side from where you just tacked, the more true your wheel is going to come out to be. Now we got 4 tacks in it. We're going to go ahead and quarter those up and get 4 more tacks, and we may put tacks in between those tacks, and then we'll flip it over and we'll tack the back side. So that was kind of a perfect example of what will happen. There's no way that plate that I cut, the 1/4 inch plate's perfectly 100% flat. It's just not going to happen. There's no way everything's just 100% perfect. So you will get to a point where one side's going to be a little off. Most of the time it's not much. It's less than a 1/16. That was probably just a hair less than a 32nd. But like I said in the beginning, the slower you go and the more attention to detail that you put into it, the better off the wheel is going to come out. So when you get something that's just a hair off, you take your pry bar, catch your center, and kind of pick up on it just a hair, and you can rock that 32nd or a hair less than a 32nd out of it. And then of course remeasure, and you're at a point that it's really easy to cut the tacks and completely start over if needed. I can cut those 2 tacks and go ahead and pivot it if I needed to start over, but let's pull the measurement and see how we came out. So we came out less than a 32nd, so I'm gonna be pretty happy with that. And something to remember is make sure when you hold your tape measure, you hold it square. If you're holding it like this or like that, you're gonna get a different reading every time. So the more consistent you can be, the better off your end result's gonna be. So we'll finish tacking it up, and then we'll flip it over and tack the other side. So this is about what you should end up with. Should have tacks all the way around it. Everything should be pretty flat, and you should be ready to weld. I recommend myself, when you weld it, I will weld 1/2 of a quarter. So if you quartered this up into 4 sections, I would weld 1/2 of that quarter, come to your opposite side, weld 1/2 of that quarter, flip it over, and your opposite 2 quarters on the back side, weld 1/2 of those. So for those that don't know, when you weld something, the heat will draw to the last spot that you welded. The last spot that was the hottest, which will be naturally the last spot that you stop welding at, it's going to want to pull that direction. So if you welded all of this and you didn't weld anything on this side, it's going to want to pull up. So you quarter them out to try to keep it pulling evenly. It's going to want to start pulling, but then when you come over here and quarter that side, or half of that quarter, it'll start pulling back up. Then you flip it over and do the same thing. You'll stay pretty square. Like I've said, I've built dozens and dozens of these custom cut wheels, and knock on wood, so far I ain't never had no problem out of them. So take your time, go slow, pull your measurements dozens of times, and you should be good. That's about it. So until next time.